Hi everyone, Linda from Let's Talk Prepping. And right now it really looks as if the house of cards is falling or collapsing. So I thought we should look at some of these headlines and see what we think. See if we can connect the dots. See if we can make any predictions. How much longer do we have? When will it all come about? Or is it just going to be impossible for us, like as lay people, to even make these determinations? So let's go look at some of what's going on. I'm over here at MSN.com. World on the brink of nuclear war, claims Russia. And this was yesterday. And Russia claims we're on the brink of nuclear war. And then this is from nationalfile.com. And Obama was giving a speech, and people started protesting and interrupting him and saying, "Stop provoking war with Russia. Anti-war activists interrupt Obama's speech." And this was basically November 2nd, which would have been yesterday. And they went through and they told him, to stop provoking the nuclear war. So here we have two instances of the house of cards just kind of collapsing and falling. From usawatchdog.com, and I was going to title this, "Weeks Away from Whole Shithouse Coming Down," but I didn't think I should use that word on YouTube on the title, so I just said the house of cards is collapsing. This is Bill Holter, and he basically is a precious metal expert and financial writer, and he said in June it was game over. They're pulling the plug. And he's talking about the Fed going up with all the high interest rates and how the economy is staggering because of it, and how we're in a recession and negative growth, and people are putting odds on whether or not we really are in a recession, and he says we are. And the interest rates have gone up, so the price to buy a new home was going up because of the mortgage. Holter says the real economy runs on credit. Everything you look at, everything you touch, and everything you do every day has many uses of credit to get to the final product or situation. So once credit freezes up, it's completely game over. And it's going to freeze up because as the interest rates go up, people won't be able to afford the different things. And he said in a past interview, I said they're pulling the plug. They have to pull the plug because mathematically the debt cannot be paid. And that is to say they have to kick the table over. He said, what will the false flag be? I have no idea. They have to kick the table over so they can say, our policies were working, but whatever this event will be, stop them. Whatever false flag event happens, that's what they're going to blame on the collapse of the economy. And then he said that the actions you are seeing now is exactly what you saw in 1987, and this is what you saw in 1929. I guess we didn't see it in 1929, but what happened then? This is what happens prior to crashes. It's massive volatility both ways. People are losing both ways. The longs get stopped out on the downside, and the shorts get stopped out on the upside. Then the whole floor gives way, and that's where we are. We're right at the doorstep of a crash that will make 1987 and 1929 blush. Many people are going to lose everything overnight. So this is what this guy says. Now, is there any truth in it? Sure there is. Is it imminent? I don't know. He didn't really say if it was imminent, but we are closer than ever to really a collapse of everything. And just to go through and point out some of the other headlines to show you that this is true. This is from MSN.com again. Shipping giant Maersk warns dark clouds on the horizon mean consumer buying will falter, threatening global economy. And this was yesterday at 6:53 a.m. And shipping giant warned dark clouds threaten the global economy as container demand slows. The Ukraine war and high inflation are weighing on consumer purchasing power. Maersk, I'm not even sure I'm saying that right. Maersk, a bellwether for global trade, expects more volatile business environment ahead. So it's not just that one guy, Halter, saying it, it's a lot of people saying it. It's Russia warning us we're closer to nuclear war. And this is the biggest shipping container in the world. And they forecast a slowdown in demand for freight services. And the shipping giant is seen as a bellwether for the health of global trade. The deteriorating economic environment has prompted many to predict the worst times lie ahead. The International Monetary Fund warned in October that the world is heading for recession and it will be more damaging than expected. Household real incomes, that is adjusted for inflation, will fall as prices continue to rise and growth in wages stutters. So we have this that's supporting the house of cards is falling down. Trouble is, we don't know when, we don't know how, we don't know what's going to happen. But let's go over here because it just shows how bad everything is. And when a nation collapses, all kinds of different things take hold. For example, on thehornnews.com, opioid painkiller guidelines softened by the CDC. It was November 3rd. So what the CDC did now is they changed the guidelines for opioids. They no longer suggest trying to limit opioid treatment for acute pain to 3 days. They're dropping specific recommendations that doctors avoid increasing dosage to a level equivalent to 90 milligrams of morphine per day. And for patients receiving higher doses of opioids, the CDC is urging doctors not abruptly halt treatment unless there are indications or life-threatening danger. So we have them loosening the opioid guidelines. We have a food crisis here, food.news. The global food crisis just got a whole lot worse. And if you go down pretty much to the end here, as shortages intensify and food prices soar, unrest is inevitably going to erupt all over the planet. So we know that's going to happen. And Kraft Heinz CEO said higher prices and supply chain headaches are likely to continue to be with us for the foreseeable future. And the UN has already warned us multiple famines are likely in 2023. With each passing day, the number of people living on the brink of starvation just keeps getting larger. This is a global crisis that isn't going away. So we have this. The global food crisis just got a whole lot worse. And another one that just shows the decay of society. And this is from frontpagemag.com, frontpagemagmag.com. Washington, D.C. to legalize public urination. You know, you might say that's not life-threatening, but it's just a show of the decline of civilization. It's also going to cut the maximum penalties for offenses such as burglaries, carjackings, and robberies. And this is again November 2nd. So Washington, D.C. is going to legalize this and then cut the maximum penalties. So, you know, that's just going to encourage more people to burglarize, to rob, and to do everything. And one other thing that you might be interested in is the Alliance for Natural Health, anh-usa.org. Alliance for Natural Health, anh-usa.org. PFAS found in tampons, and again 11.3. And More disturbing evidence of the presence of the toxic forever chemicals in common consumer products. And a new report showed that 5 out of 23 tampon products tested positive for the presence of PFAS, forever chemicals, including 2 brands labeled as organic. So they go through here and they tell you which ones they tested. And then they tested these down here, and these did not test positive. So if you're looking for one that doesn't test positive, any one of these organic ones. Now again, organic's usually more expensive, but it's also better than to have these chemicals in your body or close to your body. And they had reported before other things that had this PFAS: food packaging, drinking water, vegetables, honey, dairy, prescription drugs, dental floss, and a huge swath of consumer products. So that's an interesting article if you're interested in that. And one other thing that just shows that everything's ready to fall apart, naturalnews.com, dollar dominance scheduled for termination as Saudi Arabia declares China its reliable partner. And again, November 3rd. And this really could be the last legs, the collapse of everything. The petrodollar is now on its last leg as Saudi Arabia has declared China to be its reliable partner for energy and trade. And he lists some reasons, and it says, for these reasons and more, the nations of the world are set to repudiate the dollar and bring the U.S. empire to an end. And that is what will really hurt us if that happens. We now have confirmation that this global pivot is taking place. And we do know of all the people, all the nations that are joining BRICS now or have expressed an interest in joining BRICS. So this is from oilprice.com. Simon Watkins from oilprice.com. The U.S. is surprised by the apparent finalization of the transition of Saudi Arabia away from Washington and towards China, which effectively marks the end of the 1945 core agreement between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia that defined their relationship up till extremely recently. The petrodollar understanding, in other words, is history. The last days of the American empire are upon us. Once the petrodollar is repudiated by nations around the world, the dollar will collapse in value as nations dump it, sending a flood of dollars back to the U.S., where they will saturate the domestic economy. The result will be shocking price inflation in consumer goods, including food, followed by a suicide spiral of last-ditch money printing while the Fed buys up stocks, bonds, houses, and expiring treasury debt. And so this is going to, what this will result in is just the collapse of the dollar. The dollar could lose as much as 95% of its value. Banks will resort to bail-ins or bank holidays to prevent runs. At some point, the government won't be able to pay workers. There's going to be then a collapse of the federal government's fiscal solvency. He predicts it'll be a breakup of the United States into smaller regional nation-states which will launch their own currency backed by gold and commodities. Now, I don't know if that'll happen or not. And then he goes through a list here of what's happening in the world and in the U.S. and why things are probably going to collapse. But this, I think, is the biggest thing. Well, nuclear war would be the biggest thing, but if that doesn't happen, and let's pray it doesn't, the petrodollar just dissolving and going away, that's really going to be our downfall. Our currency won't be worth anything. Pensions will go away, Social Security. What are you going to get paid in when you go to a job? It won't be worth working because inflation will just be going up so fast. Now, how long before all of this happens? That's what you have to take into account. It could be years. It could be months. It could be weeks. You just never know. So now is the time to make your list. Sit down and say, If this happens, how will I be affected? I won't have any more money. What am I going to have? Do I have gold? Do I have silver? Do I have food? Do I have heat? Do I have water? Do I have security? Do I have everything I need to survive until society can be reconstructed in some way? Do I have things to barter with? What do I need? Because you don't want to throw in the towel and say, oh, it's overwhelming, it's going to happen, there's nothing I can do. Because you will survive. Some people will survive if you have a garden, if you have a place to get food. Your chances of survival are going to be very good. So plan now, because it's not too late. The only time that it's too late is when everything happens and everything collapses all at once and you wake up and everything's gone. So you want to start planning now, even if it's just a little bit, even if it's only a few cans of food. Do it before everything falls apart. If you're one of those people who don't believe everything's going to fall apart, then you're all set. More power to you. But for those of us who believe that something is going to happen, and probably sooner rather than later, it's time to prep. Please leave any comments you might have down below to help us through these harrowing times and before the whole house of cards collapses. Thank you for watching.